We're hearing more and more about the choices that women have in giving birth. There are hospital birthing suites, birthing centers, and even home births. But do all these choices go out the window when you're having multiple babies? If we want something other than a hospital birth for our twins, how do we determine what is possible? Today we're here to talk with Dr. Stuart Fishbane of Birthing Instincts and learn what may be possible for twin births, including giving birth at home. This is Twin Talks.
The ultrasound shows your babies to be healthy.
What? Did you say babies? You're huge. Are you having twins?
Are they natural?
Which one do you like better?
Twins, huh? My neighbor's cousin's brother's uncle's a twin.
So can they read each other's minds?
How do you tell them apart?
Twins? You got a 2 for 1.
Do twins run in your family?
Double trouble. You're not having any more, are you?
At least you're not Octomom.
If you're pregnant with twins or you're an experienced twin parent, odds are you've heard it all before. Now it's time to hear from the experts. This is Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2. Welcome to Twin Talks. Twin Talks is your weekly online, on-the-go support group for expecting and new parents of twins. If you'd like to listen to our show on the go, be sure to download the Parents on Demand app, and it's available on Apple and Android. Not only can you hear our show, but you'll also discover more great podcasts geared towards parents and twins. Well, let's introduce everyone who is joining our conversation today. So I'm your host, Christine Stewart Fitzgerald, and I'll say I've got twin girls who are now, almost 10 years old, identical girls, and a singleton. So we are a girl family, and I got to say, these 10 years have flown by. So I'm always surprised as we hear more and more about twins and just how the topics, sometimes they're the same and sometimes it's totally different. And here's Sunny, our producer.
Yeah. Hi, guys. So glad that you're joining us on Twin Talks today. I'm Sunny and I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. My last 2 were surprise twins. Not so surprised. I found out at about 11 weeks, but they're identical girls. Like Christine, I've got identical girls. And they're now 5.5. I think. And yeah, like you Christine, I think, yeah, because, okay, so my older son just turned 9 and I don't know, it always throws me off when one of my kids changes ages, then I got to think about all of them. It totally throws me off. Yeah, no, but they were born in November, so 5.5 or so years.
Yes.
And so, yeah, like you, they're constantly changing. And the moment I have their personalities, quote unquote, figured out, they change on me. And then, and it's tough too, because people will come up to me and be like, okay, how do you tell them apart? Right. And it is difficult because they're identical. And so I usually go towards the personality, like, well, this one is more but then when they change on you, then I don't even know what to tell other people. I'm like, you just have to figure it out. I don't know how to help you.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Such is the life of a parent of twins.
All right. And with that, we're going to take a break.
Okay, guys, so today we are going to do a segment called News Headlines, and we like to find interesting twin, triplet related stories. And, Christine and I were talking before today's show, and it's been hard to find stories that haven't been kind of on the sad side with twins. And so Christine and I were kind of racking our brains, but we found one that we thought was positive and uplifting, which is what we want to bring to you guys. And this is just fantastic. So this twin mom, she is 23 years old. Her name is Montoya Major, and she moved from Florida to Alabama, and her goal was to pursue a dual degree program from a university. And right about that time that she had moved, she discovered she was pregnant. Not only was she pregnant, but you guys know the story here. She goes in and she finds out she's pregnant with twins. And she's really honest in this article. We found the article on Yahoo, but there may be other places where you can find the article. But you can imagine what she felt like. Like, she was like the first in her family to go to college. She thinks she's on the right path, and then finds out she's pregnant, and she feels like, that could totally change her life. And then she finds out it's more than one baby. She doesn't have any family around her. But the beauty of this story is that she ended up graduating. And I don't know, there's just these amazing pictures of her with her beautiful babies that, again, it's really hard to tell them apart. But like, I'm looking at this picture and she's got her graduation cap on and her little girls are right next to her and they have like little graduation shirts on. And I just think this is such a beautiful story of just how... What is that? Can guys hear that too?
Yeah. Is
Oh,
that
that's a little video.
It's Whitney Houston. Let it play. Let's just listen.
That is hysterical. So this article that I have up on the website, that's a little video that just started randomly playing. We're going to leave that in the show because that's just hysterical. Whitney Houston's singing for this mama too because she's so amazing. But yes, I just think that this is such a beautiful picture.
Oh my gosh. I mean, beautiful mom, beautiful twins. And it said that she got her degree in cardiovascular sonography. And what was the other thing? I'm just looking on here. I mean, like okay, just doing dual degrees in of itself. That is just a bear. And I couldn't even imagine being pregnant. I mean, I know what it was like to just, towards the end, waddling around. And can you imagine like having to get yourself up and go to class and then she's doing, clinical rotations. I mean, like,
I know.
Just the physicality of it. Like, how do you do that?
I don't know. I mean, she had to have some sort of help. Maybe she had to pay for some. Seriously, like she's by herself. She had to take the kids somewhere in order to, kind of keep doing all this. But it doesn't go into, a ton of in-depth information about all that. But just the fact that she was able to do this. And then, her twins' names, because I know you guys are dying to know, McKenna and McKinley. Which we've talked about baby names on this show in the past. And I have a feeling she's going to mix that up quite a bit. Let's just leave it at that.
Right.
And it's cute too because her name is Montoya. So she's definitely sticking with this M theme and we'll see where that takes her.
Yeah.
She has more kids and she sticks with that. But again, just a beautiful story.
Congrats to her on so many different levels. And that's just such an inspiration. And, and I just have to say that she just said that she wanted mothers to know that you can get an education with children. And she said, I had so many friends or people I know who are told to drop out of school or actually dropped out of school because they were expecting a child and told there would be no way for them to finish. I wanted to prove to everyone in society that it is possible. No, it won't be easy, but it is possible. I'm like, wow.
I know. So inspirational. And we don't always hear those kind of stories. We hear, oh my gosh, you're pregnant with twins. What are you going to do? Your whole life is like over kind of thing. And she just took this and just made something really beautiful out of it. She's obviously an inspiration, which is why we wanted to share it with you guys today. And hopefully just uplift you a little bit today.
We're here with birthing advocate, author, educator, and fellow podcaster, Dr. Stuart Fishbane. Dr. Fishbane provides full-service prenatal and birth services to families both in and out of hospital. He's LA's only OBGYN specializing in natural breech, twin, and VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean birth. And today we're talking about birth choices for twins, including giving birth at home. Well, welcome, Dr. Fishbane. I got to say, I am so excited to have you on the show today. I've been kind of a fan for several years now. And, and I love seeing your posts when you've showed the families that you've been serving over the years and the twin births. And it's just, it's so beautiful and so inspiring. So I just thought, okay, we have to have you on the show. So thank you.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and I'm always happy to talk about this topic because there's so much misinformation out there. I just want to say a couple of things. I was listening to you guys through the introduction. The thing about remembering the ages of your kids. When I married my wife, she had 3 little boys, including 2 twins that were 3 years old. And, now my twin boys are 26 years old. And I always have to think about it for a second as to when it is true. When one of them changes ages, you have to then remember, well, now are they 4 years apart or are they only 3.5 years apart? And
thank you. You totally validated me. And I so appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it is true. And then of course, you don't hear from them for a long period of time. You can't remember, because they grow up and they go off and do their own thing, and then they're not real responsive because they are boys, and boys tend to, I think, be less responsive to their parents' needs than maybe daughters are when the daughters grow up and get past that.
Okay, now I have to ask, when they were in college, and did they come home, and then did you have like double the laundry on the weekends?
Well, I was living separated from them at the time. They actually went to college locally, so they technically they lived at their mom's house.
Okay, but they would, I'm sure, come home and it's like, we hear about kids coming home from college and it's the hurricane, right? I can only imagine with two
Yeah.
college
Well,
age
yeah. I mean,
boys.
again, I have a daughter too, and she has a lot more laundry than the boys do. I just think that the boys wear the same pair of pants all week, and that's pretty. Yeah. So anyway, listen. So it's really good. I love the twin stories. I've had a couple recently myself. I don't know if you've been following on my podcast, but we had a really good set of twins, and I'd just like to direct your listeners before we get into it today. I'd like to direct your listeners to Dr. Stu's podcast number 148. We did an interview with Dr. Emiliano Chavira, who's a godsend here in Los Angeles, who does breech and twin birthing in the hospital setting. And he occasionally will take a transport from home and give them the outcome that they really wanted. Whereas most cities in the country do not have the choice of me or anybody like Dr. Chavira.
So yes, no, that is amazing. And and really going on that, I mean, we know that by far, I mean, really the standard is for twins to be born in a hospital. And in fact, we're talking about that. Okay, there are other options is very, very non-standard. So why is it that it's just so common for most doctors just to encourage women to have either cesarean delivery or give birth in a hospital? I mean, why isn't it even talked about that there are other options?
For a long time now, the skills of taking out a breech delivery and even a second twin breech are not being taught. So younger physicians do not have the training or the skill. And what's going to be very hard is to bring that back, because there just isn't enough volume of twins in the current teaching model for any doctor to really come out of training feeling comfortable with breech extraction or a breech first twin or anything like that. So whenever twins are not vertex,
Just for explaining, so vertex is basically head down, right?
correct. About 40,
Okay.
Statistically speaking, remember statistics are useful for projecting, but they're not useful in any individual case because they don't apply to the individual. But just for teaching purposes, about 44% of twins are head down, and about 27% are head down breech.
Okay.
And about 13% are breech head down, and about 13% are breech. And that leaves about 3 or 4% for other things like transverse lie, which are pretty rare. So to get back to the question of why is section the default position, there's so many reasons on that, and I promised I wouldn't monologue because I know we have time that's limited. But the reasons are a lot are poor training, little reward for the way the system is designed. Current hospital policies generally will say if twins are in labor, the doctor who's responsible for them has to be there, and the doctor doesn't get paid more to be there for 14 hours than he does if he's there for 45 minutes doing a C-section. It's exactly the same. There's probably more liability. What happens is doctors are fearful of these things. Their fears begin to project onto their nurses around them, onto the patients themselves. And so it's not a good setting for success, even when you have a physician who wants to do that sort of thing. Plus, he's got Big Brother watching over his shoulder. And if something were to go wrong in that setting, they'll be held to pay. So
Right.
a lot of doctors just say, forget it, I'm just going to do a C-section. And it's not the right thing to do. It's certainly not the ethical thing to do. The decision really doesn't belong to them, but so often information is skewed in a direction to get the client to do what you want them to do.
Wow.
And if they start planting seeds of fear and anxiety, which is more projection than anything else, then the women become scared and nervous, and eventually they're told that if they have a C-section, everything will be safe, it'll be great, blah, blah, blah. And they don't talk about the downsides of the C-section, the downsides to the babies, the downside to the mom. They don't often talk about downsides to the future babies that mom might want to have. So when there is an advocate like me in the hospital, what happens is, and almost every physician I know who has stopped doing twins or has left the hospital to do what I do has done so because they've been beaten up by the hospital system.
Wow.
They've been brought in for peer review. They've been picked on by the anesthesia department. They're making trouble. And then the administration just wants everybody to be happy. And if there's one person that's stirring the pot, that one loud person is the one that gets beat up on. And
Oh, right. And so I think what you're saying is that there are other doctors or other providers who would like to offer more either vaginal births or other choices, but it's just a lot of policies within the institutions themselves that are really preventing them from executing that or recommending it to their patients.
Yeah, I think there are some. I don't know that there's a lot. I think a lot of doctors at this point have been pretty beaten up by what's happened to them in medicine. All the outside forces that take away the ability to practice medicine the way that you want to, because you're always being told by your administrator, your insurance company, your pharmaceutical company, what you can prescribe, what you can do, how many things you can do at one visit. I mean, I just saw a sign yesterday that was, let me just actually read it to you because it was pretty impressive. But then when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. The sign says this. It's on the door of a doctor's office, and it says, to decrease wait time due to our volume of patients, we will only be addressing the issues you scheduled your appointment for. Any other issues will require another appointment. Now, at first, that sounds rather cold.
Right.
All right. But I actually feel pity for the physician because the way reimbursement works is if you have somebody comes in and you schedule them for an annual visit or an OB visit, and suddenly they've got other problems, all right, you're not going to get paid extra if that visit takes 10 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes.
Oh, right.
So
yeah.
they have to do that. But the way it's written, it just sounds very impersonal. And I think doctors have sort of just surrendered. And when it comes to twins and breaches, they've really surrendered. There's no upside for them to be doing them. And they have really lost the intellectual curiosity to even learn how to do it once they leave their residency program.
You also talked a little bit about just kind of the fear that's been instilled. And I have to say, as a twin mom, there's tons of Facebook groups and, in the twin community about, oh my gosh, I'm high risk. And, I might have this condition and, the different types of twin types. And there's all these scary things that are out there. And sometimes it's evidence-based and sometimes it's not. But I think one of the things that does come up is this idea that, oh, well, if my twins aren't in both the vertex, both head down, and one's in breech or, in less favorable position, oh, I might be, and we can't flip them. I might have the dreaded, the two-way birth of, like, oh, I might have to, give birth to one vaginally and then the other one by cesarean section. And, and so there's this looming thing where, I see moms talk about, well, one of them hasn't flipped yet. And I don't know if I should try to do vaginally or I should just schedule the C-section. And so I think you said that in having one breech is, I think you said 30% of where you have one is vertex and one is breech.
Well, actually, about 53% of all twins will have at least one of them breech.
Wow. So it is very high. Okay.
Right.
So I can see then it's just this whole discussion about where breech really comes, or the ability to deliver breech is huge, because if 50% of births are essentially a breech, have at least one breech presentation, then that means either it's either what the doctor being able to have the skill set to do it or a C-section, right?
Yeah, even if a doctor has a skill set, if the doctor is fearful or anxious about it, that's going to be projected all the way through the last trimester of pregnancy, and even early on. I mean, even early on, I see patients in consultation who've already been told, at 14 weeks that the likelihood is they're going to end up with a C-section, because that's just what happens with twins, and no one's delivering twins vaginally anymore. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that silliness. And so there's a lot of dishonesty out there, and again, we don't have the opportunity in at least Western civilization right now to have exposure to enough, because there are no twin centers, there are no breech centers. What would be ideal in the way to bring this back into training would be to have, and Los Angeles would be a perfect example because it's a huge city, is to have one major hospital say, okay, we're going to have a twin and breech training program. And that means that people who are going to deliver, say, in Long Beach will say, well, I'm going to just drive up to, say, Cedars-Sinai and go to their breech clinic. And that way there'd be enough volume for residents in any program locally or even across the country to come and spend a couple months on that breech or twin unit and get enough experience where they would feel comfortable doing them outside. Because quite frankly, I was lucky. I trained in an era where it was considered normal, and most twins do not have a problem. The problem is the risk of twins having a problem is higher than the risk of singleton. So we tend to focus on that rather than the fact that most twins end up coming out normally if people know what they're doing.
So now also, I mean, if they're in a breach, we all talk also about flip or inversion, and is that one of the choices? I mean, if moms are, coming, let's say halfway, or, they've got, another 4 to 6 weeks to go, or, they're coming towards their due date, let's just say, and one is not in the perfect position, what are the choices? I mean, is breach, a safe way of giving birth? I mean, should they try inversion, or, what are the different options available?
Well, a couple things. First of all, there are anecdotal stories about people being able to turn one twin. Early in my career, I tried it a couple of times. I was not successful at trying to turn one twin. And now I have no reason to turn one twin anyway, because as long as twin A is what I call a stable longitudinal lie, which means either in a good head down position or a normal breech position, I don't have a problem with that person going into labor. The problem, of course, is that if any baby is breech, even if it's the second baby, which should be no problem at all, any skilled OBGYN, as part of their core learning, should learn how to do a breech extraction on a second twin. It's really not hard to do, all right? But they're not teaching it anymore. And that's where you end up with these women who have a vaginal delivery for A and then B turns sideways or something, and people don't know what to do, and then they do a C-section for B. I can't even imagine that scenario happening. If A comes out, B will come out, even if you have to reach up and get it. And, you prepare, when I do these breaches, when I do these twins at home, we have these long talks about possible scenarios that can occur. And as long as, the criteria for safe breech delivery, whether at home or in the hospital, is that the babies tend to be growing concordantly, all right, which means that they need to be within 10, 15, 20% of each other. But ultimately, they could be even further apart than that if they're both growing at their normal rate. See, unfortunately, a lot of stuff that we learn in medicine is very rigid. And if you fall outside of the rigid thing, there's no thinking outside the box, all right? There's very little thinking. They don't know what to do, and they don't know how to individualize care. And there's very little incentive, as I said earlier, financially, medical, legally, expedient-wise, to actually individualize care. A great example of what happens when something gets out of the ordinary in the typical hospital setting. And again, I'm not trying to bash hospitals. I will bash academia, because I'm glad I'm angry with academia.
Darn, professors, right?
Well, they're not teaching the core skills that make an obstetrician unique. They're not teaching that. So if an obstetrician can't do forceps, if an obstetrician can't do breech, if an obstetrician can't do breech extraction, what good is he? Explain that to me. What good is he? He can do a vaginal delivery. Well, midwives can do a vaginal delivery. He can do a C-section. Well, surgeons and family practice doctors can do a C-section. He can do a pap smear. Well, nurse practitioners can do a pap smear. You've got GYN oncologists, you've got GYN endocrinologists, you've got GYN urologists, you've got maternal fetal medicine specialists. So what is the generalist OBGYN's job other than to compete with midwives?
Right.
If he's not learning these special skills. Anyway, the thing that reminds me of when you see the hospital getting all panicky because something isn't exactly as they're used to or protocol is if you've ever seen A Bug's Life. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie A Bug's Life. It's an old Pixar.
Yes, I think we have. It's been a while.
If you have kids, they'll probably watch. It's worth watching. At the very beginning, there's a scene where all the bugs are carrying the little food to the basket, and from the tree above them this leaf comes down. Okay, and all the ants are in this line, like you always see ants in your kitchen in a line. Going to the soda can you left in the sink by mistake. All right, so they're all in line, and the leaf falls down on top of the line. So the ants behind the leaf begin to panic. What do we do? What do we do? They don't know where to go. They don't know, they're all in a panic. Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? And one of the ants climbs up on a rock and he looks at the ants that are in a panic and he raises his hands and he goes, "Calm down. We'll go around the leaf." Okay.
Around is an option.
Yeah. Calm down. Take each individual problem separately. You've got to, if you have so much fear every time you're in the delivery room, you need to find another profession. Birth is something that needs respect. It's sometimes difficult. Rarely is it dangerous, but you cannot sit there and be in fear the whole time, or you will project that onto the women you care for, and therefore they will have pregnancies where they're nervous all the time. And I don't know what that does to the developing embryos and fetuses over time.
Right. We need less stress for all the twin mamas out there who are pregnant. That is a really big thing, right? We need less stress. We want to have happy mamas, happy babies, healthy babies. So I am totally with you.
And from the very beginning, finding a practitioner who is knowledgeable in twins and supportive of twins and doesn't read you all the things that can go wrong with twins at your very first twin prenatal visit, or even having prenatal care along with your doctor, with a midwife or somebody else, getting concurrent care so that you get a calm sense of self along with all the things that can go wrong. And we should talk briefly about the
midwife. Yes. In fact, you know what? We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the birth choices and what it means to follow the midwifery model of birth that I know you've been talking about. Well, welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Stu Fishbane about the choices that women have in giving birth to twins. So we've been kind of talking about just the kind of the process and what both women and physicians are faced with, and that kind of our current model of care seems to push women towards giving birth in a hospital because of a lot of, let's just say, regulations and standards and fear and just a lot of crazy stuff. But I know, Dr. Stu, you've talked about following a midwifery model. So, I mean, what exactly is that? Can you tell us, about it?
Yeah, I can. And I want to just say one other thing just to finish up with the last segment, was that there are issues about twins which make somebody probably not a good candidate for a natural type twin birth. And a lot of it has to do with something called chorionicity, which means, are the babies in their separate sacs? Are the sacs in separate sacs? Or are they all in the same sac? And I won't get into that today, but some of your listeners
and we
can
do
look
have
it up.
another, I was saying, we have another episode about twin types where we talk about, yes, if they're sharing a placenta, twinning, how does it happen in twin types? Absolutely. Yes. And that is different levels of care.
For the rest of the podcast, we'll make the assumption that everything is going swimmingly and normal, and that's great. So the midwifery model of care, whether it's for twins or singletons or whatever, is just a model of care where much more is spent on preventative health care. Much more, the philosophy is such that birth is wellness and is a normal function of the woman's body. The medical model, or the medical model of care, the obstetric model of care, focuses on pathology. That's the way that residents are taught, that every woman with a little bit of hyperbole, is a potential walking time bomb, and that the job of the physician is to prevent anything bad from happening, even though those are the rare times. Maybe about 15% of the time in pregnancy, something requires medical attention, and about 85% of the time it doesn't. But all 85% of those women are being treated with a medical model by somebody who is talking to them all the time about the baby might be getting too big, or there might be too much fluid, or if you go too far overdue, then this is going to happen. And, there's increased risks of stillbirth or increased risks of that. And they talk mostly about relative risk and not about actual risk. And people don't know the difference. And so
oh my gosh, totally. Okay. I have to say, I felt that in my own pregnancy when I was getting the care. That is exactly what happened to me. I mean, I was 37 when I gave that birth. So, okay, geriatric, right?
Yeah. Which means absolutely nothing
right.
to the normal practitioner. Right. But you're labeled at a category of high risk. And if you label somebody high risk, I always have this theory that actually makes them high risk because they are now worried.
Right.
Just because you labeled them that way.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so everybody, I remember going through the care and they were laying everything out and saying, oh, well, once you reach 35 and the risks are significantly higher, blah, blah, blah. And oh, by the way, having twins, so you got this double high risk. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, it was my first pregnancy. And in my case, I've been pretty healthy. I've been fairly fit, my whole life. And I have a healthy lifestyle. And so I've personally never been worried about my twins. And I'll just say, I did end up carrying them to 39 weeks and 5 days. And of course, nobody believed, they were just in shock that I carried twins that long. And so I to your point about perceived risk versus actual risk, I mean, I think that really, really needs to be honed in, that I'm not a walking statistics. And I think each and every patient, when they're having the discussions with the doctors, should be looking at, well, what is this patient's lifestyle choices? I mean, what's their prior history? What are their current, what's their diet? What's their exercise? What are the risk factors? Instead of just saying, okay, you're this age, you're having twins, this is the twin type pregnancy. And okay, well,
Right, and what are their future fertility plans? What are their future family planning? Do they
Right.
want more children? If they want more children, we should do everything we can to avoid that initial cesarean section. So that those things don't come up in the conversation very well. And the midwifery model deals with that sort of thing because the prenatal visits are generally 30 to 60 minutes long. And I know that most of your listeners who go to an OB, I would say that most of the OB visits, if they last more than 5 or 6 minutes, are pretty darn good because, and you can't possibly get into preventative health care in 5 or 6 minutes. You can't ask them about their diet or diet recall. You can't ask them about sleep. You can't ask them about stress reduction and how's things with your partner. And you can't ask them about their birth plan or what their concerns are or fears are. You essentially go in, you take your tape measure, you measure the belly, you listen to the baby, say, God, things looking great. Your blood pressure's fine. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And that's sort of the typical prenatal visit in the medical model. The midwifery model is also different in labor too, is that they're much more attentive, but they're attentive in a way that leaves you alone. So they're not interrupting normal mammalian birth. I have a big talk on this about how every other mammal gives birth by going off to a quiet place by themselves, uninterrupted, and they're allowed to eat or they eat and drink as they feel like it. And when they're ready to give birth, they give birth, and nobody else bothers them that whole period of time. And anytime they are interrupted, or a predator approaches, or whatever, or they're starved, or whatever else, their labor stops. They get up, they run away. And so what we do to the human female is antithetical to about everything that's typical for normal mammalian birth. Whereas midwives tend to honor that space much more than the medical model. I, for the life of me, can't figure out why my colleagues don't understand that everyone needs to be monitored, everyone's vital signs. I mean, how often in labor does a blood pressure, if it's normal on admission, does it actually change to a pathological amount? Yet they have policies or protocols that mean that blood pressure cuff on your arm has to blow itself up every 30 minutes. And, it tends to interrupt whatever you're doing. And then they have to come in and, you can't get up, you can't walk around, you can't get in the shower, you can't get on all fours because we have to have those belts on.
And how is, I just curious, and you talked about in the prenatal, like in the midwifery model, the fact that in OB/GYN's office, they're not being able to talk about preventative care. And do you see more preventative care emphasized using the midwifery model for prenatal care?
Yeah, I think it's more personalized preventative care. I think in doctor's offices, they may give you a handout.
Right. Here's the paper. Read it.
Read it. Right.
Here's the list of vitamin supplements you should be taking. Right.
Right, but the midwife will go over all those things with you,
right?
And they will ask you why you're not taking them, what's going on at home, blah blah. And to solve those problems, you're much more likely to get labor to come naturally without interventions. And midwives are not, they don't follow this thing where we need to start testing your baby because you're over 35. We need to start testing your baby at 38 weeks because your placenta is old and will give out. All right. I mean, the things that they say to people, your hips are too small. The fluid is lowish. I mean, what does that mean, lowish? The baby's too big. How do you know the baby's too big? All right. I mean, women haven't delivered 9.5 pound babies out of their pelvis before.
Right. Now, I was wondering, so I know a lot of women who have been maybe, hearing about this and, looking at the midwifery model and desiring to give birth out of the hospital. How is it different? I mean, what can women expect when they're giving birth outside of a hospital? What's that experience look like?
Well, first, since this is a focus on twins, I'll try to focus just on twins. Obviously, the recommendation from organized medicine is that any home birth is inappropriate. And they consider breech twins and VBAC to be absolute contraindications to out-of-hospital birthing. I'll state that categorically that that's what it says in their guidelines. I will also state categorically that they freely admit that these guidelines are what are called level C evidence, which is consensus opinion. There's no data or good science that says that, probably because there just isn't enough data. So they're consensus opinion. And what consensus opinion would you expect from people whose consensus opinion is that home birth sucks? So you're not going to get that. Now, I think twins and breeches, of all things being equal, would be better and safer. Safer is a very loaded word, but I'll use it here.
Right.
To be delivered in the hospital setting. The problem is all things aren't equal. And you're not going to get the success rate of birthing in the hospital is less than the success rate at home. And the intervention rate in the hospital is higher than it is at home, which then leads to outcomes that may not be so good. So I would tell you that as an expert in normal labor and working with midwife colleagues for all these years, because they're experts in normal labor, they're expert at recognizing when labor isn't normal. And you can be quick to transport. And when you rarely see the rapid deterioration of fetal status that they talk about in the hospital where, the baby's heart rate went down and they did a crash C-section, and thank God they saved the baby. Yeah, but they saved the baby from the fact that iatrogenically they had caused all this problem in the first place by epidurals and overpitting and immobilizing and starving the mother for 20 hours. So we don't see that at home. When we see things happening at home, the well-trained practitioner can actually see things coming from plenty of time away, and it's very rare that we have a 911 sort of call from home. The most common reasons why we call 911, and I would say it's less than 1 or 2% of all births, is actually for postpartum problems like bleeding,
right.
or the baby is breathing, but it's breathing a little fast, or we don't like the color, and we think the baby should go get evaluated, but we're not going to put the baby in the car seat to do that. We're going to call an ambulance, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare to have an ambulance come to take a mother away in labor. It does happen. Of course it happens. All right. But the success rates of twin birth, breech birth, VBAC birth at home are significantly higher than the success rates in the hospital. And that's simply by the model by which women are cared for and the fact that there's a trusting of the process that's going on especially with twin birthing, because nobody's going to do twin birthing out of the hospital that isn't really confident with twin birthing. So you're guaranteed a confident practitioner if you're having a twin birthing experience outside of the hospital.
And how about like at birth centers? Because a birth center is sort of a quasi kind of in between, right? Compared to home.
Well, birth center, surprisingly, birth centers don't have any more equipment in them than what we bring to a house.
Oh,
so
okay.
Birth centers are a compromise for possibly proximity if somebody lives far away or up in the hills or in the canyons here in Los Angeles, or if they have a house that's got 3 roommates in it and very thin walls and they don't feel privacy there. A birth center is a really great option. Birth centers also have really nice tubs built in as opposed to the portable tubs, but that's a small reason. But most people, if I were to encourage somebody to have a out-of-hospital birth, I would strongly recommend they stay home, because then they never have to get in their car and they never have to disrupt the normal thing. They can stay in a place they're very familiar with. And if they have the baby there, they never have to put the baby in the car seat 4 hours later and drive a baby home.
Right. Like, that's so true. I got to say, just going in labor. We hear these crazy stories about just, getting in the car. And I can say from my experience, I was living about 35 minutes away from the hospital where we gave birth. And I remember, with my twin births, that was, that and my singleton birth as well, like the most uncomfortable car rides ever. I was having back labor and it's just I'm like, and I think that's torture in of itself, to try to be strapped in a seat, right?
Right. And many communities don't have the option that we have here in Southern California for twin home birthing. But one of the things that people can do is if they can find a practitioner at the hospital who's somewhat flexible, they could actually hire a midwife to do what's called monitrice work, which is they could stay at home with them. They can listen to the baby, stay at home with them in labor, and get them to the hospital when they're 7, 8, 9 centimeters dilated, as opposed to bringing them in, I broke my bag of water, so come on in. Oh, you're 1 centimeter. And now you're 1 centimeter, you're stuck at the hospital, you've got twins, and they're not going to let you go home. And eventually they'll start Pitocin, and the whole cascade of interventions will ensue. So people that have twins, again, finding a confident practitioner is ultimately the best thing that you can do, so that you don't end up with the person who's telling you you're too old.
Right. No, I have to bring Sunny in on this. So I don't know, were you over 35 when you had your twin? What was your experience? Were you getting sort of the fear, feeding the fear of having twins?
I was 35 and and they make you feel like you're an alien, right? When you go in there. And I think I'm trying to, did they even know, when do they do that? I think that I want to say that whole experience where they ran down, okay, here are, the things that could happen now that you're pregnant and 35 and older. I want to say that appointment happened before we knew they were twins. Is that possible? When do they typically do that?
They would probably do it at the first visit around 10 weeks when they're talking to you about genetic screening.
So it did. I think what happened, if memory serves, I had a regular appointment with the OBGYN that, delivered my previous baby. And I even asked, I said, is it twins? Because you guys know that listen to Twin Talks. I always wanted twins. Just one of those weird people, always wanted twins. And she said to me, no, they're not twins. Or no, it's a singleton. Or just one baby. Maybe she didn't say singleton. And so my hopes were dashed. And I probably scheduled another appointment where they walked me through everything because I'm, geriatric. And, instilled the fear of God in me of what was going to happen during this labor and delivery experience. And I think it was another appointment where they actually did the ultrasound and then they told me there was more than one. So, but no, I'm very familiar with, again, where they run down all the potential things that could happen and just scare you, honestly. Like, I'm sure they have to do that for some reason, but that was not fun.
No, they don't have to do that for some reason. I think that is, again, projecting their own fears and anxieties to be sure. There's ways of giving informed consent where you make people feel comfortable, and there's ways of giving informed consent where you scare the shit out of people.
Yeah.
But the twin birth, the twin birth itself can be a really beautiful thing, and even doing it out of the hospital, it's different than doing it in the hospital because in certain situations you're allowed to be in different positions. In the hospital you're probably going to be on your back with your legs in stirrups. Once baby A comes out in the hospital setting, they often, and this is the way I did it for years, they often then go right up and break the bag on twin B and deliver twin B within 5 to 10 minutes of twin A. Because part of me believes that's just the way they've done it for a long time, and part of me believes that's because they've got 12 people standing in the room waiting to take care of those babies.
They don't want to be sitting around twiddling their fingers for baby B to come out, right?
Yeah, every twin hospital generally has the NICU team standing by for even if they're term babies. They call out the National Guard for every twin birth. Because their anticipation, and I understand it, but maybe all these people could stand outside the room instead of inside the room, and be a little less intimidating. But that's just, it's not that the thought process is not that. The thought process about birth is that the end point is having a good baby and a good mother, which is laudable. But on the other hand, there's so much more involved and this is a life-changing experience for women and their husbands and their family members. And it's treated often as if you came in with a gunshot wound or you're having your appendix out. It's very mechanical. And when all you're taught is that twin pregnancy is dangerous, and that's sort of what's taught to residents. Mm-hmm. I didn't come out of my residency program thinking like I do now. It took a long time for me to evolve. And it all started with me covering midwives as a backup physician. I had no intention of ever backing midwives, but they approached me and asked me to do it. And I was a capitalist at the time, because building the business of practice was different in 1986 than it is now, where people come out, usually, sign with a Kaiser or some other HMO and get a salary, work certain hours. It's a better lifestyle for them than what we have. I mean, they know when they're on call, they know when they're off call. It's a much better lifestyle.
So you brought on midwives just because there was a financial opportunity, and then they ended up teaching you something in the process.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was very open-minded to it. I enjoyed their company. I ended up going to some of their meetings. But I was lucky though. I trained in an era where twin delivery was considered normal, and we learned to do breech delivery. I mean, I trained at a big hospital, LA County USC, where they had 22,000 births a year, which is 65 births a day. And, even if only 2% of births or 1 or 2% of births are twins, that means every day I was on call, there were at least 2 sets of twins on average. And, we get to do everything there. So that kind of training doesn't exist anymore. And so we do have to be more flexible. And that's why I think we need more collaboration between the midwifery model and the medical model rather than less. And we need to stop belittling each other. And we need to accept the fact that midwives are trained to do twins, and then states pass laws preventing midwives doing twins, but don't mandate that doctors do them. So it's a schizophrenic sort of approach that organized medicine and state legislatures have, is that they want to protect patient safety by banning midwives from doing things they're skilled to do and then forcing women to have cesarean sections. And I'm not exactly sure how that improves patient safety.
Right. So from, expectant twin mom perspective, I mean, if she's looking to have a more natural, doing a vaginal birth, and maybe she's not here in Southern California, maybe she's another part of the country. I mean, what's the process that she should go through to try to find out what options are available in her area?
Well, I would stress the fact that if she's a multiparous woman, if she's already had 1 or 2 vaginal deliveries and she's got twins, and that first twin is head down or even in a stable breech position, she should not have a cesarean section. She should, because the success rate for her is going to be above 95% delivering vaginally, and to section all those mothers is a shame. For primips, it's a little different. The success rate's about 74% in my experience with primips, but that's still better than 100% C-section.
And wait, so primus is having twins as the first pregnancy, right?
First pregnancy,
okay.
Correct.
Yep.
So what can you do if you're not in a community that doesn't have any practitioners? Well, it's a tough one, because relocating to a community that does is sometimes a big deal, especially if you have other kids. I've had three or four sets of twins that have moved to Los Angeles at 36 weeks and got an Airbnb or lived with family and had their twins here with me. But that's the exception rather than the rule. The problem is that most people can't afford to do that. They can't afford to be away from home that long. So, and then many states have laws against midwives doing twin delivery. So you're screwed, basically. I mean, sometimes you may have to drive 100 miles if you can find a doctor at a university setting that is willing to do twins. But then there's a chance that you go into that day and that doctor's not on call.
That's tough. So I think you're saying you kind of have to look to learn about what the regulations are in your state and your immediate area, and then look at options, look at maybe the surrounding area and other states, and see what options are there, what providers are there. And if this is really important, consider doing a temporary stay. I mean, maybe if you've got family that you can stay with for a couple months. I mean that might seem tough, stay with the in-laws, right, to give birth, but if that's important, maybe that's the thing that should be considered if you want to have that natural, calm, out of hospital birth.
Yeah, and then being properly selected. We didn't really talk about that because maybe you talked about that in a previous podcast. But if you're properly selected, my average twin goes to 39 weeks in one day. The average twin in a hospital will never make that because they're all induced between 37 and 38 weeks because they're told of the rising risk of stillbirth.
Right. Oh, yes. 38
by
weeks,
the way, there
we
is
hear
a
that
rising
constantly.
risk of stillbirth. Even in singletons, as you farther along you get, the more likely you are to have a stillbirth. But the number is so small that to change your birth plan because of a number that's twice a very small number, it's still a very small number, but you're not sort of told that. From what I hear from third hand, from when patients come to me as a second opinion, I don't think that doctors understand statistics very well either anymore. And I don't think they understand that ultimately the choice doesn't belong. There are ethicists who think that if we think we know best, we're supposed to skew our counseling to give a recommendation and make it more difficult for the woman to choose something outside of our recommendation. And they think that that is ethical. And they have a good argument for it. I just happen to disagree, and so do many of my colleagues, that we believe that women are intelligent enough to be given information if they want to know our opinion, to ask our opinion, and then to be able to make a decision. And medical ethics, the kind that I follow, dictates that given the same information, we shouldn't expect two people to come to the same conclusion. And therefore, we should be respectful of any reasonable choice that they make. Now, some doctors may think that twin birthing out of the hospital isn't reasonable, and they don't have to support that. But to tell them that they're crazy and the babies will die or whatever else, that's unethical.
Right.
To tell them that, I can't support you, but there are practitioners in the community who might. Why don't you go talk to them and see what they say, and then maybe come back and talk to me about it, and we'll have a conversation. That is beautifully ethical.
So I think what you're talking about is just the idea of informed consent, that the women, the expectant moms, really need to have the wide range of information available to know what choices are, whether or not the particular provider believes that, they are the best. They're going to have their own personal opinion, but women need to be in some ways trusted to look at information and do that decision-making process themselves, armed with good, practical, real evidence-based information.
Exactly. And fighting for the birth that you want.
Yeah.
You really need to do that, because bad things can happen at home and bad things can happen in the hospital. The hospital is no guarantee that because you're there that you'll have a good outcome. All right. As a matter of fact, a lot of times bad outcomes, or at least scary outcomes, happen because you're in the hospital and because of the way that you were managed in the hospital. And anyone that denies that is not being honest. And yes, bad things can happen at home. All right. This is, again, I'd like to end on a positive note regarding twinning, because it's just a beautiful experience when you're involved with twin birthing. It's a lot of work for the mom. It's amazing how strong women are, and babies are designed for this.
That's great.
And your practitioner, they're designed, they're designed to come out vaginally, and and the placentas are designed to support two babies in the uterus through labor. And if they're not supporting it well, you can hear that, and then you know that it's time to go. So it's not like, as I said, it's not like there's a sudden switch.
Right. So I'm just wondering, maybe just share with us a little bit, what does it look like from your perspective? What does a twin birth at home look like? And how is it just so different than a hospital birth, a twin birth at home?
Well, quite frankly, if it's a multip twin birth, I'm enjoying myself pretty much the entire time. And when it's a primip twin birth, I too have a little bit of hesitancy and anxiety that I may end up having to do stuff. And so we have these long talks beforehand about me possibly having to reach up and get the second twin, and what that's going to feel like and what that's going to be like. And if you tell me no as I'm trying to do it, then I have to stop. And if I have to stop, and the baby's in trouble, then we have to call an ambulance, and that's not a good thing. So I give them this information ahead of time so they can think about it and decide, is this something that I think I might be able to handle? But normally the time we don't have to really do anything. What we do is the first twin will come out, and sometimes that twin's a little bit more stressed initially, but mom will generally reach down like with a singleton birth and pull the baby up onto her belly, and then sit back and hold on to the baby. And one of the midwives from my team will assess that baby while we'll take a good look at baby B. I bring a portable ultrasound machine. It's not always necessary. A lot of midwives don't do that. But I bring a portable ultrasound machine to check the position of the second twin and the heart rate of the second twin. The heart rate's good. We just leave it alone, and we let mom and baby A have their time, have delayed cord clamping, do whatever they want. Eventually, at some point, mom will start to make sounds again, like because her contractions are coming back, and she'll want to hand the baby off to somebody else because she's now like uncomfortable again. And at that point, we can either we do a vaginal exam to check the position of the baby. And if it's the head's right there, we have her push. If it's not the head right there, we maybe take a look on ultrasound. If it's the feet, we talk about doing a breech extraction at that point and just breaking the bag of waters, going up, getting the feet, pulling the baby down, taking it out breech, which is for any skilled OB is a very simple procedure that actually makes you feel like all those years of training were worthwhile.
You get to be a hero. Yeah, you get to do something, and
you get to use your skill. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of skill to do a pap smear or a C-section.
I just think the moms being at home, and just from the feeling and the sensation of being at home and being in your own bed, and just I've seen videos of the twin births, and it just seems like it's so calm compared to a hospital setting.
Yeah, and there are groups on Facebook and other social media outlets that people who have twins can go to, where they can speak to other women who've been in the same position. I actually have a list for my clients of what I might call my twins moms list. It's other moms who've had twin births who've presented in my office with the same dilemma and had births at home. And some of them have ended up being transported. Some of them have had babies at home. But I supply that list to the future moms so they can contact these women and share their stories, and they can find out a little bit of how they did it and what was it like. And again, I'd be willing to share that. Those women would be willing to share that with any of your listeners who contact me through birthinginstincts.com. Even though they're not my clients, I'm sure that my twin moms list people would love to talk to anybody.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Stu, for joining us today, and just, oh my gosh, all the insight and kind of new contrary information that we've been hearing today, contrary to what we're normally hearing. It's refreshing and very thought-provoking. So thanks for having us. And yeah, I want to encourage our listeners to check out Dr. Stu's websites, birthinginstincts.com. And with that, we'll be back.
Okay, so before we let you guys go today, we have a segment that we like to do where we just share some funny stories that we find online that people are sharing. Sometimes they email it to us. And sometimes it's from the perspective of a twin who's now an adult. And they're sometimes reflecting on funny things they did, with their other twin growing up. Sometimes we share stories of just things that regular people have perceived other twins, happening between other twins. Today, I'm going to share two with you because both are kind of short. But the first one, this is really funny. So this is the perspective of a twin who has a twin brother. So two boys, okay? But he's basically reminiscing about their childhood. So this is what he says. My twin brother was president of the class and I was vice president our junior year, which by the way, isn't that just interesting? Like, I don't know if they ran on the same ticket or whatever, but you've got like president and vice president. Anyway, so he says he was vice president his junior year. When it came time for our school re-election speeches for senior year, my brother completely forgot and walked home. I did my speech for vice president. Then I borrowed a friend's t-shirt and made up a presidential speech for him on the spot. And here's the kicker. They both won. That's one thing you can do. It's titled Helping Out, which, he totally just got his brother reelected president. But it's kind of fun how they were kind of helping each other out there. Here's another funny one. And now this is from the perspective of someone who worked with a set of twins. Obviously, they had to be identical. So it's really quick. It says, the McDonald's manager often puts one twin on the pay window and the other twin on the food window just to mess with customers.
So the drivers are like, they go up and they pay and they're like, hey, great. And then they go to the next window and they're like, wait, didn't I just see you?
Didn't I just pay or did you run over? Like, you know what I mean? How would that would totally throw me off if I was just having one of those weird days where like nothing's going right. I'm like, what? But I thought I just paid. And then it would even be crazier if they're like, now can you please pay?
Right.
Your bill.
And then they're wearing different name tags, right? And so you go, wait, everything is exactly the same, right? Same
It's like, so
I should encourage my girls to do that, their first jobs, work at a fast food restaurant. Just to throw people off.
Yeah, that's right. Just have fun with it.
I have a funny twin story too.
Okay, go ahead.
My twins were trying out for, I think it was 9th grade football at their high school. And one of my twins was slightly heavier than the other twin. All right. And they had a weight limit. Okay. So you can see where this is going.
Right.
So the lighter twin is under the weight limit, tries out, or just gets weighed in. And you don't have to try out. It was just a weigh in because if you're over a certain weight, then you have to move up to a different class.
Yeah.
And they wanted to play in the same. So he goes to the weigh-in, gets weighed in, he's fine, goes back to the car, changes his shirt, changes his shoes, comes back to pretend he's his brother, all right, gets weighed in and passes.
Oh,
right?
Gosh.
So they could play on the same team, even though his brother would have been outside the weight limit by about 5 or 6 pounds.
That's so funny. Yeah, so that's another example of helping out your twin. There's a good more to the story. I don't know if that's how we're supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, I was not too pleased. When I heard about it, I was not too pleased about the ethics of it. But I thought, you know what? It's pretty clever. Why not?
I was just going to say, they get points for creativity.
Yeah.
and helping out your brother.
Yeah.
Brotherly love.
Well, that wraps up our show for today. We appreciate you listening to Twin Talks. Don't forget to check out our sister show, Preggy Pals, for expecting parents, and our show, The Boob Group, for moms who breastfeed their babies, Parent Savers, your parenting resource on the go, and Newbies for new moms during the first year. This is Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go. Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording, so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.